G'day guys, ZiggyD here. Today we're going to be taking a look at a free-to-play digital card game by the name of Infinity Wars. Disclosure time, this video is part of a paid promotion for the game. That means that I'm being paid money to check this game out and to make a video on it. However, I'm not being paid to say nice things. I am not that kind of girl, mister. My opinions are always my own, and you can read more about my code of ethics in the description below. So I've been checking out a lot of card games lately, and I've been especially looking for digital card games that do something a bit different, ones that take full advantage of the digital format in interesting ways. Infinity Wars, as it turns out, does that a bunch. In this game, both players take their turns at the same time, secretly. You plan all your moves, and then when both players are done planning, they'll execute at roughly the same time. This means you'll need to anticipate your opponent's plays before they make them and strategize accordingly. For example, Death Ray is a card that can kill a creature, but only if it's on the battlefield. You can target a creature that's not on the battlefield if you believe that your opponent will be moving it onto the battlefield on the next turn. If they do, then it gets zapped and dies, and if they don't move out the creature, then your Death Ray just fails completely. And this only scratches the surface of the implications of this simultaneous turn system. When you get into the nitty-gritty, you can change the ordering of your creatures in the attack and defense zones, shift them between zones to throw off your opponent, or even pull them off the battlefield completely to protect them from removal cards you believe are coming. If you're starting to freak out a little, then yeah, you're right too. This game is indeed quite complex. There are so many little things you can do each turn, it can be quite overwhelming. There are certainly simpler playstyles you can adopt, like the deck that I've been playing, but I think this game is definitely tailored to players who want a deeper, more complex, and more strategic card game. This complexity is a good or a bad thing. It depends on what you're after. What I can say from my time with the game so far is that it's not just complexity for complexity's sake. It looks like there's actually a fairly high skill cap to the game here. Another thing that Infinity Wars does to take advantage of the digital format is fully animated cards. You can't do that in paper games. Card art is a big deal for some people I know, and beautiful, fully animated art is certainly a selling point for the game. So now let's cross live to Ziggy in the field, who'll give you a bit more detail on how the game works. Thanks, Ziggy. Down here on the battlefield, let's talk about the different zones and how they're split up and how your creatures move around them. So, first up we have the command zone. These are your commander characters, and these actually define your faction alignment of your deck. Each commander of a specific faction will give you loyalty to that faction, and certain creature cards or certain ability cards or any types of cards will have certain faction alignments that you need to meet in order to be able to put them in your deck. So in order to have a Flamedawn Commando, I need one alignment to that faction, which I'm getting here from Bromic. Now on the same token, I have another commander here, G of a different faction, who gives me the alignment required to be able to have an infected monk in my deck. So the commanders are important for a few reasons, because firstly they shape how your actual deck is constructed in the first place. Secondly, they actually are always there every game. They're always in the command zone, and that means you can either use their abilities, like for example G here has a ability where I can sacrifice a resource to get a 6/6 Angel Spirit, and this is quite important to my strategy of my deck. And it also just means that you can have creatures that you want to play every game and reliably be able to do so to counteract the randomness of card draw. So I know that every game I want to be able to potentially play Saculus when I want to play him, not when my deck determines that I'm going to draw him. So I have Saculus chilling here in my command zone, ready to be played whenever I need him. Now commanders are kind of already on the battlefield, which means they can potentially be hit by some removal abilities and spells, so you need to be aware of that, and sniping your opponent's commanders can be very satisfying. They can also move out to the battlefield at a moment's notice, so you need to pay attention to your opponent's commanders and when they could be played, because as long as I have full resource, I can play Saculus into the defense or assault zone whenever I want to. Next up we have the support zone. This is where your characters or creatures are first played. So let's say we want to bring out a Torchbearer here, we deploy him, and then we end our planning phase, and then that'll resolve. So he is now on the battlefield. Now, when he's first deployed, he'll actually be exhausted, so he can't actually just go straight into the defense or assault zone. He has to chill in the support zone for a turn, essentially. Now that it's the next turn, we can freely move him out to either the defense or assault zone, or we can just leave him in the support zone if we want. If we want to just have him hang back here and provide some extra abilities, like for example, these wealthy nobles like to sit in the support zone, just providing extra resources. then they can do so, they can just stay there. But we want to get him out at assaulting, so we'll put him in the assault zone. Now let's talk about the assault and defense zones. As you'll notice, my torchbearer just assaulted my opponent's fortress, and he did so automatically. As long as creatures are in the assault zone, each turn they'll automatically attack your opponent's fortress. Now, if your opponent has creatures in their defense zone, then they'll automatically defend. So you can move a creature over here to the defense zone, and any assaulting creatures will automatically be defended against. The important thing here to note is that order of creatures matters. Because this is automatic, the way this works is your leftmost creature will be the first assaulting creature each turn, and it goes throughout the creatures. So we can actually have multiple creatures here in the assault zone. I just played a creature with charge, which can be played straight to the assault zone. You notice I can shuffle these guys and actually change their order here. Now, if my opponent is defending with a 3/3, then having this guy at the front is pretty good, because then we know we're going to kill him and our creature's going to stay alive. Another important thing here is this creature here, if he attacks a character, then he actually moves back to the support zone. He's a bit of a fraidy cat, so he slashes the fortress if he can, but if there's a defending creature, he'll just duck back into the support zone. So we want to order this in a way that this guy's going to take out the defenders, and any defender sitting here is going to be taken out by this guy first, and then this guy's going to swing afterwards. So if our opponent has one defender, hopefully our torchbearer can take care of him, and then our fleeting footman can attack our opponent's fortress. Poor Puffy the goldfish is a training dummy AI and doesn't actually put up much of a defense. So the game plays out in such a way that you're trying to play creatures thinking ahead, knowing that they're going to have to sit in the support zone for a turn, so bringing out my Infected Purifiers and my Flame Dawn Centurions. And these guys will be able to enter the battlefield and actually engage in combat next turn. And then at the same time, we're shuffling around defenders, trying to defend against nasty threats from our opponent, and also trying to assault at the same time. Shifting our strategy around from defense and assault, or even if we know our opponent's going to play some sort of battlefield-wide sweeping removal card, then pulling our creatures back to avoid it. Another feature that's tucked away here in the corner is that you actually have access to this marketplace here throughout the course of the game. You can expend resources in order to do any of these three things here. You can pay 3 and shuffle a card from your hand into your deck and draw a card, so you can actually exchange one card for another at the cost of 3 resource. So let's move to the next turn, get some extra resources here. So let's pay 3 and decide that, well, the Docile Panda is not much use for us. We're feeling pretty assaulty now, and he only has 1 power, so we're going to exchange the Docile Panda, and we get a Flame Dawed Footman instead. Alternatively, we can also just pay 5 to draw a card, so we can get additional card draw that way. So you have a lot more control over how you spend your resources on cards or drawing extra cards instead. And later on, you can even pay a large amount of resources in order to increase your maximum resources to play some really big cards towards the end of the game. Obviously, you've been seeing me deal damage to my opponent's fortress, and that is indeed one way of winning the game. Bringing your opponent's fortress health down to 0 will win you the game. Now, this game can draw, and you'll have to consider your defense at the same time. Don't get greedy like I have many times in the past, and trying to reduce your opponent's fortress health to 0, and then actually, sneakily, your opponent goes on full assault and tries to draw the game by bringing your fortress health to 0. The ranked format in this game is played in a best of 3, so draws can be a viable strategy. Now, the second win condition, and you may have noticed another health bar here, is actually the morale. Now, let's say you want to play a bit more of a turtley style, or a bit more of a controlling style, and are not so aggressive and not really that focused on wanting to destroy the opponent's fortress, then morale might be your victory route. You'll notice here in the top right of this card that there is a second number below the 2, which is the casting cost of the card, and that says 3 just there. What this is actually the morale cost of this creature. Now, if the fleeting footman dies, then I lose 3 morale. So a viable win strategy is to simply defend and efficiently trade characters and use removal spells to kill your opponent's character, use sweeping removal and things like that, to actually drain their morale down to 0. There are a few other win conditions in the game, such as some locations, which you have to do certain objectives in order to complete them and build them up over time, and when you complete them, you win the game. So there are a few other win conditions you can build your decks around as well, but health and morale are the 2 main ones. Alright, so that's the basics of gameplay. Let's take a look at the supporting meta features. Game modes, there's a bunch of them. You have a fully fledged PvE campaign, which includes a tutorial to learn the game, and a campaign map for various factions. The Academy includes gameplay puzzles to improve your skills and understanding of the game's mechanic and strategies. You can also warm up against multiple difficulties of AI opponents, though they're a little dumb. And then there is the PvP. In Constructed you have Unranked, Ranked Best of 3s with sideboarding, and then interestingly a Fixed Deck mode where you play with set decks against other players. This mode is a nice touch as it levels the playing field between players who own lots of cards and players just starting out. The decks are made with the help of the community as well, I hear. And then there's the draft mode. You can practice drafting versus the AI, or you can draft a deck to compete against a series of players with increasing rewards at the end for each win. It's a separated drafting system, if you know what I mean. Everyone has their own random pool of cards to draft from, rather than a shared drafting format. As this game is free to play, now let's take a look at the monetization model. It's pretty much what you'd expect with two forms of currency, one you buy and one earned through gameplay. You can buy various booster packs, with some boosters being aligned to specific factions to counter the RNG a bit, so if you like only playing one faction, you can just buy boosters that only contain cards from that faction. These premium boosters can only be bought with the paid currency however, but all the cards can be obtained with the free-to-play currency. You can also buy some pre-made decks. I can't comment at all on how good they are, but you could use them as a base deck to build off of, I guess. The drafting mode I mentioned earlier can be paid for with either of the currencies, and or Rift tokens you can buy bundles of from the store. And then of course you can buy various cosmetic things such as card backs, avatars, and fancy battlefields to intimidate your opponents. So I played about 12 hours of Infinity Wars at this point, and I think that the game has something legit to offer. It's different enough to the other digital card games I've played so far, and it takes full advantage of the digital format in interesting ways. And the monetization model seems fair enough, though to be fair, the devs set me up with a press account, so I already had access to everything, so take my analysis of the monetization model in particular with a grain of salt. But I mean, looking at what's actually there, it looks decent enough. A final thing I'd like to note is that the community of Infinity Wars is pretty small at the moment, but it is friendly. In fact, while recording this video, I made friends with another player, and we had a very close rematch where he showed off his crazy zombie flood deck. However, a small community is something to be aware of, as it can mean longer wait times at certain times of the day. I had to wait a couple minutes to find a game with fixed decks, for example, though the other formats were near instantaneous. The devs do seem to be pushing for growth at the moment, with this sponsored video as evidence of course, and I believe they're working on a big UI update for the near future, so the game could see some growth. I hope you guys have found this helpful. Ideally, you now know whether Infinity Wars is a game you want to check out, or whether it's not for you. If you guys like the look of the game, you can download it for free from Steam, just check out the link in the description below. You can also use my code ZiggyD for 5 free packs if you like as well. That's it for now, I'm ZiggyD, and thanks for watching.